For the city council meeting of February 8th, we're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Captain?
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Jennifer, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Avila,
Here?
Councilmember Beaver,
Here.
Councilmember Thorpe,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan,
Here.
Mayor Bogue.
Here. All right, so moving down the agenda, we have an employee introduction, and I'm not sure who's,
That would be Ben.
Ben.
Matlock, and
come on down, Ben.
Thinking about honorable mayor and city council members, I'm pleased to present our newest member to the planning team, Miss Madeline or Maddie Jordan. She is our assistant planner, providing essentially the review of conditional use permits, track maps, providing assistance to those at the counter, and then kind of helping me with a variety of planning activity, also doing plan checks within the city and any other duties that are assigned. Kind of a bit of background, Maddie grew up just over the hill in Mentone and graduated from Redlands High School, and then went after that to study geography and GIS at UCLA and graduated in 2019. Since then, she has worked as an intern for the city of Redlands and also worked in the private sector as an environmental planner for IEA CAST. I would say probably the thing I have noticed since she's been with the city of Yucaipa is she's a very bright and sharp person, and so she has learned very quickly the process that we have and is very responsive to applicants and customers and providing proper review of projects and trying to get them answers as quickly as they can so that they can move forward with their projects, and it's been very helpful. Different customers have even relayed their appreciation for her hard work and efforts to keep projects moving quickly. So with that, I'm excited that she is part of the planning team and want to welcome her to the city of Yucaipa.
Hi everyone, I'm Maddie and I'm really excited to keep learning here and growing, and I've already been able to get my hands on some really cool and fun projects, the Dutch Brothers Coffee and some senior housing, things that I think fellow friends in the industry haven't had the chance to work on yet, so I'm really excited to just keep learning and growing here. Can't complain about the views either. It's a beautiful city, and my heart's definitely here in the IE with my family and friends. So thank you for welcoming me aboard.
Well, thank you, Maddie.
Maddie, I have a question.
Come on up, Maddie.
It says here that you were in Europe working and, what did it say here? Learning about sustainable communities in Northern Europe. Did that include the public transportation system, things like that?
Yeah, so in 2018, I went to Sweden, Switzerland, Germany, and Denmark, and it was a very immersive, like, cultural experience of a lot of hands-on touring sustainable facilities and planned developments, from everything from solar to green infrastructure and things like that. So one of the main things we did is just like bike and take transit everywhere, and it was really inspiring to me and something that will definitely, I think, carry me in the field in the future.
With city council or with city manager's permission, I'd like to pick your brain. As the chair of Omnitrans, one of our goals is trying to find ways to create a sustainable public transportation system. And I think maybe if you had some examples you can share with me, I can share that with Omnitrans.
In terms of, I think it's difficult here in the States to some extent because we're designed so heavily to have a vehicle and have a car. I mean, even in a big city in LA, having gone to school there, I was able to make it work without a car. It's just, your travel times then are extended. So increasing, the amount of opportunity for bus stops, like the frequency of arrival and things like that, I think might encourage people more often to take the transit. I'm really excited to see the extension of the railway in downtown Redlands. I definitely would have taken advantage of that had that been around when I was.
Yeah,
going
and
to
that's
school.
where we're faced with challenges like that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Maddie, we're going to have our picture taken with you, so
Oh,
come
cool.
on.
In the-
Dad privileges? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's going to take us to public comment. And I do have Bill McEwen. His item is actually on the consent agenda, so I'm going to have you come on down and give us your name and your address, Bill.
Good evening, council members and staff. Bill McEwen, 12361 4th Street. Few changes. I have a couple of things. The first one is I'm hoping that maybe we can get a little better communication going with the public concerning the vaccinations that are going to be available coming up at the Sheriff's Center. On the computer, I click on and all I get is a letter with your signature on it asking to lift the stay-at-home order or whatever. So it's kind of unrelated to the, it's a technical thing on a computer. I see it's on the big billboard out front though, which is good. But the communication that people can go there and get vaccinated is really good. I've already done mine. I went to the San Bernardino Health Center, 2-shot regimen. There's 3-week interval in between, but I just think, God, this thing is horrible. I mean, this is a really, really bad pandemic. I have a brother right now that's dying of, he has stage 4 lung cancer. And he's gonna be gone before long. But you think of these things that these people are gasping for breath when they go to the hospitals. It's just a horrible thing they're going through. So I really hope that we can put more emphasis on the idea of helping keep the public healthy. And I understand the problem with the businesses. It's real hard to conduct business when you're shutting down restaurants and that sort of thing. But this pandemic is just a terrible thing. So I hope that the communication with the public concerning that can maybe be a little bit better. Okay? All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
I'm sorry. One other thing?
You were going to talk about item 2.
No, there's one other, real quick. On the computer, it hasn't got the new council members' names on the contact. It still has 2 previous council members. So maybe that can get it updated as well. That'd be good.
Okay,
Okay, just a suggestion. I'm not being critical.
all
Okay.
right. Thanks, Bill. All right, so that takes us to the consent agenda, which is items 1 through 4. Are there any items that someone wishes to remove?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second.
I think it was David.
David and then John. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so that takes us to mayor and council member business reports. Well, does any council member have something they'd like to say?
I do.
Okay.
This Friday, February 12th, 2021, marks the 8th anniversary of the tragic loss of Yucaipa Police Detective Jeremiah McKay. On February 12th, 2013, Detective McKay, along with first responders from the region, selflessly rushed to danger in order to save countless lives. Jeremiah was assigned to the city of Yucaipa. He was our detective. When the word came that a monster was approaching our city by way of State Route 38, Detective McKay rushed to intercede, ensuring that monster would not invade our beautiful Green Valley. Detective McKay embodied the epitome of law enforcement officer that day, standing between us and the danger that exists. For that and so much more, we owe Detective McKay a huge gratitude and will never forget the sacrifice he made to the citizens of Yucaipa and of San Bernardino County. I respectfully request we observe a moment of silence to recognize the tremendous sacrifice made by Yucaipa Police Department Detective McKay and keep Lynette, Caitlin, and Caden in our prayers.
All right, so are you guys okay with that?
I am.
All right, let's. Thank you, Justin. Thanks for that reminder. It's a good reminder that we actually named our road into our police station, the Jeremiah McKay Way. So, David, do you have something?
Yes, sir, I do. As the dais knows, I'm a part of the Southern California Association of Governments and with the Community Education Housing Development Committee. And I was informed last Thursday that a number, I think there was 12 cities appealed the RENA numbers. 10 of them were denied, and 2 of them were partially approved, including, and I can't remember the names of the cities right now, but the result is going to be about 400 homes total that are going to be reallocated throughout the region. I can't remember how many cities there are, but we're going to have whatever our original number was. Ray, what was it, 2788, 2877, something like that. We're going to get another 30 or 40 homes that's going to be added to our total number. But beyond that, RENA numbers are relatively stable and doesn't look like it's going to change unless a city decides to appeal. Interestingly enough, City of Santa Ana asked for more houses, more housing units. They weren't happy with the number they had. They wanted more. So maybe they'll take up.
That's unusual.
Take up
Can we-
all that's been left over and then some. So anyway, that's what I have to report for council member business.
Good information. John, do you have something?
I have nothing.
Bob, sorry I missed you. Do you have something?
What happens to a city that has no more land to develop and they just keep stacking them up like that?
Well, and that's part of the challenge for the built-out cities is that essentially they have to stack them up. They have to remove single-family areas and replace them with higher density areas. That's their only alternative. That's not quite that simple. So they often have some vacant land, but for the most part, that's the direction they have to go.
In one case where there was hundreds of homes eliminated, it was due to the area was designated a floodplain by FEMA, so you couldn't build there. And so they won their bid to at least have those houses, those numbers reduced, because that's the area in which you would build. Everything else is, and these are the urban cities, not like Long Beach, but it's Pasadena or someplace like that. Just high density, and they just they don't have any more places to put without demolishing homes and then putting up high rises. You can't do that.
Right. All righty. So that takes us to item number 5, the resolution expressing support for furthering local control.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This item is just that, resolution expressing support for actions to further strengthen local democracy, authority, and control as related to local zoning and housing issues. As council has heard in several meetings over the last several months and beyond, and before that. The state continues to pass laws that take local control away from cities, and they're certainly proposing legislation already this year that fits that same category. We talked about some of that at the last meeting, and we'll bring those results of the League of Cities Housing and Economic Development Committee back to you when we have the minutes available from that. But certainly that trend continues. So there has been a movement. Received an email from the City of Torrance, Councilmember Mike Griffiths, on behalf of a group called California Citizens for Local Control, made up of city representatives, that is pushing back on these efforts of the state to take away local control. Certainly, cities are the best entity to consider the housing needs of their community and balancing out the other needs of the community as well. And so that is the kind of the focus of this group, is to push back on some of the state legislation that is occurring year after year in an effort to take away local control. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Resolution is a little more detailed than that, but that's the general direction of this group.
All right, so are there any questions for staff?
Do we have a representative? I mean, do we just voice our support? How does that work?
Yeah, I think at this point, it's just voicing our support, adding our name to the names of other cities that have joined this group and in this effort. I expect there will be more action items for this group as time goes on politically with the state, but at this point, we want to ask council whether you're interested in joining this group and supporting this effort.
I believe is this the one that originated down by a few council members and a mayor down at one of the beach cities?
I think that it's where it's coming out of. Yeah, Torrance is the city that
Okay.
sent us the request. Perhaps Councilmember Beaver has a little more information. He's the one that brought it first to my attention.
So the city of Torrance, I think, led the charge by creating this coalition, California Citizens for Local Control. The idea is becoming the we the people we've so frequently seen, and fighting the bills. And it says not all the bills have passed. However, there is a troubling trend towards bills that restrict local control by mandating by right development, increasing densities like we just spoke of, and decreasing parking requirements. There are other communities within the county of San Marino that have already signed on. The Torrance council member, who's also the chairman, also requested a resolution that we support this. Several other cities, I think the email said something like hundreds, have already supported this movement to maintain local control and making these rules for our city as it relates to housing requirements.
All right, so is that your motion?
I motion that we support this movement and sign the resolution and forward it back to this coalition.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that takes us to item number 6. I believe this is Jennifer, seating time for public comment.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. At the last meeting, staff was directed to bring forth resolution number 2018-46, which is the council rules and procedures as it pertains to seating of time and public comment. Currently, the rules do not address or allow speakers to cede their time to another speaker. It has been up to the discretion of the mayor or presiding officer. We did reach out to our cities in Southern California or in California, and we received 14 responses in terms of what they do and what their policies state. Of the responses received, 6 do not allow ceding of time, 4 permit it, and 4 leave it up to the discretion of the mayor, somewhat to what we do here in Yucaipa. In addition, we did get a response from the County of San Bernardino today. They also do not allow ceding of time. They do allow 3 minutes per speaker on consent, department reports, and public hearings, but they do cap it at 12 minutes. Options that council may want to consider are listed on page 29 and 30 of the staff report. And at this time, we're just requesting that you review and consider options as proposed and direct staff accordingly. That's all I have at this time.
All right, so are there any questions or comments for staff or for council?
Just to clarify that one community, the maximum of 3 minutes, no ceding of time, but they can allow based on compelling information, whatever, up to 12 minutes for a person, a single person, who would normally get 3 minutes.
What their rules state is speakers may address the board for up to 3 minutes total on the consent calendar, up to 3 minutes on each discussion item, and up to 3 minutes total on public comment, not to exceed a total of 12 minutes for the meeting unless it is determined that a different limit is appropriate.
Okay, so it's 3 different issues.
And that's the county of San Bernardino.
But that's not 12 minutes consecutively,
That's only-
that's
No.
just total.
No, it's total. So if you had like, you know, you're limited to basically 4 items on the agenda.
Right.
Even though there might be 15.
Well, I just want to make a quick comment before we go forward, is I know Councilmember Avila and Mayor Pro Tem Duncan understand that it's not a perfect science. When you're up here, you know, people don't finish exactly at 3 minutes. They have maybe finish a couple sentences later, and you want to give them that opportunity. But then there are some who just take advantage of it. So it's tough. You really don't want to be rude, and you want to hear their comments, and you don't want to cut them off. But then there are some who take advantage. And I know they understand you're not sure exactly when and when to cut them off. So I know they understand it at this point. So it's not a perfect system. So with that, I'd like to hear what people have to say in regards to public comment.
Well, right now, if someone wants to get up and speak 3 minutes on 5 different items on the agenda, they can do that, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so 3 minutes is all they should have on any given item, and they should never be allowed to cede time to somebody else, in my humble opinion. I would like to see people show up here instead of talking about Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, talk about the rezoning of their property if they've got 2 acres to 600 apartment complexes. I'd like to see them show up and complain about that. But, you know, I think 3 minutes is plenty for, and they should never be allowed to cede time to somebody else. And I hope that got recorded.
David, you have something?
Yeah, I believe that we should have a 3-minute limit with latitude of the presiding elected official to give to the speaker based on, as the mayor indicated, maybe to help the person finish their thought, or if there is enough compelling information to suggest that we'd want to hear more. But basically, it's 3 minutes, and we don't cede to anybody else because that can drag on for too long. And sometimes that's a strategy to discourage and frustrate others. So I believe, as Councilmember Duncan does, for maybe a little bit different reasons, is 3 minutes is appropriate, pending the presiding officer's discretion based on what the speaker has to say.
John, you have something?
I would agree. The 3 minutes, I think, is sufficient with your discretion as to if it carries over to wrap up their time. But I think stacking time, I think we're going to open a lot of issues if we allow that to keep happening.
Okay.
I would think we watched the last meeting that take place. In a perfect world, it was at the discretion of the mayor. One of our speakers speaking on the AVA matter requested additional time because it was a lengthy topic. The mayor approved and it was granted, I think a total of 5 minutes total. It worked out. I think that's the way it should be, but I agree, no ceding of time.
No ceding of time, but continue with the mayor's discretion?
3 minutes, no ceding of time, and mayor discretion.
Okay.
So I'll return at the next council meeting with an amendment to the resolution that states no ceding of time.
Do we need to vote on this?
Probably.
Just
to
more of a
clear
study.
the direction in the minutes.
Okay.
I motion to move forward as indicated by the city clerk.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second.
And what was the motion?
To return with a resolution that provides regulation as to 3 minutes of time per speaker with mayor's approval or presiding officer member approval with no ceding of time.
Got it, yep.
But this, if you were to give discretion, the person has to have already used up his 3 minutes speaking. So it's not done prior to him speaking.
I think that would be up to you, Mr. Mayor. I know at the last meeting, it was requested beforehand. It made it easier going into it, knowing what was gonna happen, but I think that would be your discretion, sir.
Okay.
My thought is 3 minutes. If the information is compelling enough to extend the 3-minute limit, rather than say, I need 6 minutes and give that person 6 minutes, and it turns out to be 6 minutes of rambling, it doesn't do the council or the members of the audience any good. So 3 minutes, and at the end of it, then it's up to the presiding officer, whether it be the mayor, mayor pro tem, or whomever.
Right, that was kind of what I was trying to explain, yeah.
If I could clarify, so the rules already state the 3 minutes, and in section 5.2, it says any member of the public desiring to address the council shall limit his or her statement to the 3 minutes unless further time has been granted by the presiding officer in the individual case or in accordance with 2.5. So what I would come back to you with is just basically that they're not allowed to cede their time, is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Everything else stays the same.
Yes. Now did you want a motion and you want an action on that?
I think that's what you were telling me, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's your motion?
Yes, sir.
And who was the second? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. So that takes us to possible action on pending legislation. Ray, do you have anything?
I have nothing this evening, Mr. Mayor. I do plan on bringing back the results of your actions from the last meeting and the conversation at the League of Cities Housing and Economic Development Committee at our next meeting.
I know there's a bill coming down in the legislature. It's about giving agencies and the public 3 days notice when a new COVID mandate comes down. So it's not immediate. You actually have 3 days to comply. Is that something perhaps we could look into?
Absolutely. I'll bring that.
Okay. All right, so that takes us to department reports. Item number 7. Who is item 7?
And that will be Mr. Blackersby this evening with also Mr. Preciado helping out.
All right.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. This mid-year review, similar to mid-year reviews in the past, walks through a categorical discussion of major revenue sources and department expenditures as of the end of December, as well as presents various budget enhancements and service level options for council's consideration. We would, however, tonight like to start with one part of the discussion regarding the city's investment strategy to get council's direction, then move on to the rest of the report and the more formal recommendations. As mentioned at a previous council meeting, based on changing economic conditions and large cash flows the city has recently received, city staff sees an opportunity to revisit our investment strategy. We have engaged with Public Financial Management, PFM, the city's financial advisor, as they have provided us with information to help guide us in a decision. PFM has made a presentation to staff and to the Finance Committee regarding economic conditions and outlook, as well as strategy options. And we have Richard Bobby, our PFM representative, on the line tonight. And he's actually going to go through some of that same information with you as I can direct your attention to the PowerPoint.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mayor and council members, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. On slide 1, it's just to provide you some basic economic background. So what we see in these charts is that when the pandemic first hit at the beginning of 2020, we saw a sharp deceleration of economic activity, as indicated by GDP on the left and total employment on the right. And as the initial lockdown was sort of lifted and the economy started to open up again, we saw a significant rebound. But the key thing to note is we're still a long ways from full recovery. If we go to slide 2, we're showing the Federal Reserve's forecast going forward, and this is from the December meeting. And what all of these indicators, GDP on the upper left-hand, unemployment on the upper right, PCE inflation on the bottom left, and federal funds rate, show that the Fed suggests there will be continued improvement over the next several years. But the key thing that I want you to note is in the bottom right, the federal funds target rate. They anticipate keeping it at its current level at least through 2023. The Fed only does its forecast out to 3 years. The longer run may be 6 years or more out in the future. So it doesn't mean that interest rates will increase to 2.5% in 2024. So we'll be in a low interest rate environment for a long time, even though the economy will be improving slightly. On slide 3, the U.S. Treasury yields. To provide additional context, what we show is the red line is the 10-year Treasury yield. The blue line is the 2-year Treasury yield. And while we've seen some increases in longer-term interest rates, as indicated by the 10-year Treasury, shorter-term rates like the 2-year, which is more indicative of the maturity range the city can invest in, have remained very low, and we expect them to remain low for an extended time frame. So that's the investment environment we're in. That we currently very low interest rates, but anticipate interest rates increasing somewhat in the future. One key aspect of fixed income investments, if we go to slide 4, is that if you buy a fixed income security, what happens is if interest rates rise after you bought it, the value of that security decreases. And if interest rates fall after you bought that security, its market value increases. So what this is showing you from a historical basis is the blue line shows you the 2-year Treasury at the end of each of these periods. And the gray lines show you that unrealized gains or losses in this particular portfolio based on those. So what you can see is interest rates increase, the market value of this portfolio decreased, but when interest rates started to fall again, the market value increased. To bring it back to the city's portfolio on slide 5, this is an actual calculation of the city's earnings on its managed portfolio, excluding LAIF and other funds, during the time frame from September 30th of 2017 to September 30th, 2018. Over that time frame, interest rates, the 2-year, increased by 1.35%. The first set of rows is market value earnings, and the key thing that I want to point out to you is the change in value. Because interest rates were rising, we saw that the unrealized value of the portfolio decreased by almost $800,000. So on a market value basis, the return on the portfolio or the earnings on the portfolio during that 1-year period was negative $33,760. But if we exclude those unrealized gains and losses and look at just the accrual or sort of accounting basis earnings in the bottom set of rows, what we show is that the portfolio earnings over that time frame were almost $500,000. So that's one of the key things to understand with fixed income investments is it has a unrealized gain and loss component of it, but it's the type of thing that whether you recognize it or not affects things going forward. On slide 6, I wanted to show a comparison of several different investment strategies. The table on the bottom shows you the annualized total return that includes the value of unrealized gains and losses for each of these approaches over the 10 years from 2011 through 2020, the most recent period when interest rates were very low and then rose again, and then the cumulative 10-year annualized return of these. The chart above shows you the same information, but on a graphic standpoint, on a quarterly basis. The key thing to take away from this is if we look in the table, over the 10-year period, having a longer strategy, a 1 to 5 versus the 1 to 3 year late, provided the highest annualized returns. But if we look at the chart above, you see that red line's the 1 to 5. The longer strategy had the most volatility on a period-by-period basis. So that's the trade-off between different strategies. Shorter strategies have less volatility. Longer-term strategies have more volatility but higher returns. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Richard. For some additional context, I would like to remind council some of the history of the city's investment strategies. Some time ago, the economic conditions were such that short-term interest rates for a period of time were actually providing better returns. Rather, short-term investments were providing better returns than longer-term investments. And at that time, the city had provided direction to PFM to cease reinvesting securities as they matured. And in essence, kind of rolling off our investments from a longer-term strategy and instead putting them in shorter-term investments such as LAIF. And for the reasons mentioned, we do believe now is a good opportunity to reevaluate this. This last slide, which I will leave up here, kind of discusses the various types of strategies that might be able to be employed here. LAIF being that first line, which operates kind of like a government money market fund, and the next two lines are kind of a 1 to 3 year focus, and then a 1 to 5 year focus. I would like to note that these strategy options here are all consistent with current investment policy. They would require no change to the policy at all. Finance Committee has reviewed this item and did recommend incorporating a longer-term investment strategy into the overall portfolio. The recommendation to council tonight is that council provide direction to the city staff in regards to the city's investment strategy going forward.
And so we're going to adopt, do you want to take it one at a time, Ray?
Yeah, if we could get direction from council on that, and it's, again, within the existing investment policy strategy, it's just migrating a little more towards longer-term investments is what we're asking.
Yeah, in committee, we decided that moving into the longer-term strategies, which really means, what'd you say, 5 years?
Yeah, no more than 5 years, but certainly a larger investment in the 3 to 5 year time period.
Okay. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Do you need a motion, or you want to, we'll wait to the end?
Yeah, well, either way, you can take a motion on that longer investment strategy now.
Just make a motion.
Yeah.
Move to approve.
So we have a motion by David to move into longer-term investment strategies?
Who's on the finance committee? You?
Yeah,
Myself and the
Justin
mayor.
and I. Yeah, we went through this in a very detailed manner. So we have a motion. You have a question, Bob?
I'm not sure.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Need time to think about it? Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Keep going, Ryan.
Thank you so much. So we'll move on to the revenue review portion of this mid-year review. A kind of a review of the major revenue sources of the city's general fund. We'll start with sales tax. As you may recall, the fiscal year 2021 adopted budget did reflect a decrease from the previous fiscal year's adopted budget by 15% due to projections regarding the coronavirus economy. Based on most recent conversations with HDL, the city's sales tax consultant, staff does believe the current budgeted amount of $3.5 million remains an appropriately conservative projection for the year and recommends no changes at this time. However, we will continue to monitor this revenue source and consult with HDL going forward, especially given the uncertainties in the coronavirus economy. In regards to property tax, over the last number of fiscal years, property tax revenue has seen steady year-over-year gains. In a conservative budget effort due to the coronavirus economy, property tax revenues in the fiscal year 2021 budget were projected to be approximately flat compared to the prior year's adopted budget. Though it is possible the positive trends from prior years continues, it is difficult to make a revised annual projection at this point in time in the fiscal year due to the timing of property tax receipts throughout the year. We receive a large portion of our property tax revenues in the second half of the fiscal year. However, receipts in this fiscal year do seem to be consistent with the pattern from prior fiscal years, and staff is therefore recommending no change to the $7.3 million general property taxes budgeted for the fiscal year. For similar reasons to that, staff is also not recommending any updates to the RDA residual budgeted amount.
Motor vehicle license fee, the VLF fee, similar to prior years, VLF revenue is not expected until the second half of the fiscal year, so we don't have any information to make any recommended changes at this time for that revenue source. It is important to mention building and safety revenue. This is because the number of permits this year processed through the first 6 months of the fiscal year have more than doubled compared to the same time in the previous fiscal year. Because of this, at the end of December, building and safety revenues have already achieved 90% of the revenue budget for the entire fiscal year. Staff is recommending an increase in building and safety revenues in the amount of $495,000 to accommodate this new projection, which will be partially offset for an increase in professional services expense as pursuant to our contract with Charles Abbott, our building and safety contract staff. They do receive 65% of that revenue. Community services, moving to the community services department, they have been impacted significantly, as you know, by the coronavirus economy. Prolonged lockdowns have drastically reduced the level of service the department has been able to provide to the community. And since department revenues are based on fees for service, the revenue is down significantly. The department has, however, continued to provide some services to the community as allowed by state guidelines. For example, the STARS before and after school program has offered a modified extended program in the community center. Various other services have continued, including the city making department facilities available for COVID-19 testing and vaccinations. Staff is recommending the City Council authorize the city manager to perform a budget adjustment for the Community Services Department to reduce the operational revenue budget to match updated projections for the fiscal year, which is currently projected to be a reduction in $1.3 million. It is important to note that this reduction does not directly reduce the level of service to the community. It rather updates the budget to reflect our already best projections for the rest of the fiscal year. Also want to note the department is estimating $100,000 in CARES Act funding to offset administrative and other COVID eligible expenditures. So I'd like now to jump to the expense side of things here. Starting with building and safety, department, as previously mentioned, there will need to be an increase in the professional services expense budget in building and safety to accommodate the additional revenue, the 65% that goes to Charles Abbott. Similarly, with community service, as just mentioned a minute ago, the department has been impacted greatly by coronavirus, so the department has made significant cutbacks, which include decreasing staff. And the staff does continue to balance the need for cost-saving measures with the need to be prepared to quickly be able to offer services to the public again if coronavirus restrictions change to allow it. It is difficult to predict future expenses as they relate to any of this possible reopening of the economy, but staff is expecting department expenses to be approximately $650,000 less in the current budget. And staff is recommending the City Council authorize the city manager to perform a budget adjustment for the Community Services Department to reduce this operational expense budget to match updated projections for the fiscal year. It is important also to note that included in the expenses for the year are costs related to administering the CARES Act grant program, as well as $100,000 as the required 50% match for the Coronavirus Relief Fund Round 3 funding source. Also, mobile home rent stabilization services. There will be an increase in expenses due to required activities related to the Valley View MHP MNOI special rent adjustment application and hearing, required notifications to the residents, and notification to all MHP residents regarding AB 2782. Staff is recommending a total increase in operating expense budget of $17,300 in this department, in this division, for professional services and office supplies. Couple other expenditure items of note. In paramedic services, as a reminder, the Paramedic Services Fund runs at an annual budget deficit and it does now require a transfer from the Fire Services Fund, which is part of the general fund as presented in our financial statements, to support its operations. The amount of $551,000 was budgeted for the current year, and it is still anticipated to be needed at this point. In regards to another future expended expenditure, staff has been directed to look into the use of remaining proceeds of the property sale at 13th and the Boulevard, and the use of funds from RDA pass-through funding to improve a parking lot near the high school. Staff will return to council at a later date with a recommendation regarding that. We also have various budget amendments and service level options for council's consideration tonight. I would like to start with one in relation to the MOU salary increase. The Memorandum of Understanding with the General Unit approved by Council on June 8, 2020 includes a retroactive raise to city staff of 2.7% if the following conditions are met, and this is a partial quote. If, one, at the time of the mid-year budget review 2021, projected revenues exceed 1920 revenues by 2%, or two, revenue losses related to COVID-19 are reimbursed through state and federal funding. Staff does believe that CARES Act funding received does meet the intent of Condition 2 of this MOU language. The revenue most able to be considered directly impacted by coronavirus are sales tax and community services revenue. A calculation as presented in your agenda report of projected fiscal year actuals for these two revenue sources compared to the actual revenues received from the prior fiscal year result in year-over-year losses of approximately $835,000, while the amount of revenue from the coronavirus relief funds, the CARES Act rounds 1 and 2, alone that went to directly benefit the general fund was $1.1 million. Accordingly, staff is recommending council authorize the MOU specified raise with an estimated budget impact of $161,000. $157,000 of this for this purpose was previously anticipated and tracked as part of the general fund budget relief that was freed up by CARES Act revenue. Also, as a note, there should be a change to the wording in the recommendation 2 for this item to indicate that the MOU salary increase is effective as of July 3rd, consistent with the resolutions. In relation to an item in the fire department, as previously presented as part of the 2021 service level options but deferred, a vehicle for the fire battalion chief is now necessary. Estimates are that this vehicle will cost $100,000, and staff is recommending a budget amendment to allow for this purchase, which will come from fire fund balance. Moving to a couple items related to police services. Adding a position dedicated to traffic enforcement and other police activities will promote public safety with the goal of reducing collisions and providing more resources on the city's streets. Staff is recommending the addition of a deputy and the corresponding budget increase for fiscal year 2021 of $88,000. The estimated annual cost of this position going forward will be incorporated in future annual budgets and is currently calculated at $211,000. Staff is also recommending allocating $150,000 from the general fund for cameras, ALPRs, and associated costs. This is intended to cover ingress-egress ALPR cameras at Sand Canyon and Campus Drive, as well as 4 surveillance cameras at each Yucaipa Boulevard, Valley Center, Oak Glen Road, Yucaipa Boulevard, Oak Glen Road, Calamasa Boulevard, and possibly other locations depending on final cost. Finally, for police services items, staff will return to City Council with a plan for hardening commercial center designs against future criminal activity in the development review process and with a longer-term policing strategic plan for adding resources. To an item in administrative services regarding contract finance staff. As you know, over the past year, the Administrative Services Department has seen many changes in staffing and has relied on services of contract help from NV Chang and Associates to fill staffing needs. We are still working diligently to fill these staffing need positions with approved positions, but as of now, the accounting manager and senior accountant positions remain vacant. Also, we have recently received the resignations of 2 other additional administrative services staffing members, which makes staffing needs all the more urgent. Staff is recommending an increase in the contract with MV Chang and Associates in an amount not to exceed $190,000 to accommodate these needs, and corresponding budget amendments as needed for a net $0 impact to the budget, as these funds will be coming from salary savings from those vacant positions mentioned. To an item in information systems. Due to increased demand on the IT staff and to be consistent with the information system strategic plan, staff is recommending the addition of a staff position with the title Network and Support Specialist. The COVID pandemic has changed the way the city does business to include remote work, teleconferencing, cloud-based systems, et cetera. They've all placed a high demand on this department for the city. Additionally, there has been an uptick in cyber attacks at local governments, and it has increased the need for enhanced cybersecurity and consistent infrastructure upgrades and maintenance. This position will play also an important role in the implementation and maintenance of technology the city has prioritized investments in, such as surveillance cameras and the ALPR system. The fiscal year 2021 budget amendment for this position would be $42,000 with an annualized budget cost estimated at $101,000, which would be incorporated into future budgets. We also have an item regarding development impact fee funds, the DIF fee funds. One item still pending from the fiscal year 1920 audit relates to the repayment of general fund loans given to each of the 5 development impact DIF fee funds of drainage facilities, traffic facilities, public facilities, fire facilities, and park facilities. Council previously adopted on June 22nd, 2020, a formal interfund loan agreement which provided that each of these DIF funds repay 50% of their revenues over the next 10 years to pay off their individual portions of the overall loan of $22.3 million. This loan agreement was adopted at the end of fiscal year 1920, and so amounts were not originally budgeted to make the first payments in 1920 as stated in the loan agreement. However, auditors' inquiries into the reasonability of the loan terms in relation to projected revenues has caused a need to reevaluate the terms of this loan agreement, including repayments for fiscal year 1920. So staff is recommending the following: a budget amendment in fiscal year 1920 to allow for repayment of 50% of DIF revenues as per the original agreement, the adoption of a new loan agreement to replace the prior loan agreement, and a budget amendment in 2021 to allow for repayment of the DIF loans in this fiscal year as per the new agreement. Major changes to this agreement include changing terms applicable to future payments, such as increasing the revenues pledged to 100% from 50% for public facilities, and extending the overall term through the year 2049, though a few of these DIF funds are projected to repay their individual shares of the loan much sooner. The assumed rate of development in the community underlying this new DIF revenue projection is 4,500 units over the next 30 years, which is similar to the rate of development over the last 30 years, and different than the previous projections, which assumed full build-out up to 10,000 units as per the general plan. These new projections provide more evidence of reasonability of repayment. The new agreement also allows for additional disbursements from the general fund to the DIF fee funds if needed for purposes of cash flow timing. And this is important because some of the projects supported by DIF funds do have to incur expenses in advance of revenues, whether they be grant funds or other revenues, and in essence end up having to carry these projects. The general fund ends up having to carry these projects for a period of time. Additionally, there is a financial reporting requirement that the general fund make a loan to any fund with negative cash balance as of June 30th for any given fiscal year, which appears in the statements as an interfund loan payable to the general fund in the fund with a negative cash balance. And we do anticipate that there is going to be one such fund, the Drainage Facilities Fund, that will end fiscal year 2020 with such an additional liability to cover cash. New DIF revenue projections underlying this new loan agreement do indicate that the city's DIF fees need to be reevaluated. In fact, the underlying revenue projection assumptions of the new loan agreement rely on future updates to DIF fees, especially fees related to commercial development. City staff will return in the fall with recommended changes to the DIF fees. An item related to the Five Winds Ranch Phase 1. In order to complete necessary Five Winds Ranch Phase 1 work, which includes the cost of engineering, survey staking, clearing, grubbing, grading, and utility irrigation system expansion and modification, staff is recommending a contribution from the general fund in the amount of $200,000 to the project. And I believe Fermin is going to make a few comments on that item.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. The concept plan on the screen before you is the concept plan that was approved by City Council in 2020. The Five Winds Ranch project is included in the current adopted fiscal year 2020-2021 capital improvement program. The proposed Phase 1 improvements are located at the east end of the site. At the east end here, we have the existing parking lot, the existing restroom, and then the existing structures at the Five Winds Ranch property are located in this area. So as part of the Phase 1 improvements, the improvements that are proposed to be included is the site preparation for 4 yurts or cabinets for overnight camping. Those are located here, these 4 here on the east end of the site, the cabinet site. An archery course, which is proposed to be located just north of the existing parking lot, and several equestrian-related amenities in this area here, again, just west of the existing parking lot, along with the proposed overnight camping area for equestrians here. As part of the Phase 1 work, there will be some grading improvements completed at the site to support these amenities and also improve access to the site. If approved, Phase 1 work can be completed through volunteer efforts and also equipment and material donations, along with the $200,000 that is being proposed for this item.
Thank you, Fermin. Staff is also recommending items related to a reorganization and development services department. In planning, with the additional planning-related activities that have been occurring, including a substantial increase in the number of building permits submitted, the current and projected increase in the number of large and complex planning entitlements, and the number of new advanced planning initiatives, staff is recommending a reorganization in the planning division. The recommendation is to unfreeze the development services technician and reclassify it to an assistant associate planner, as well as reclassify the current assistant planner to an assistant associate planner, resulting in 2 assistant associate planners in the division. In the engineering division of the department, given the number of projects under construction, the increased level of private sector land development construction, and ongoing need for utility coordination, staff is recommending a previously approved assistant associate engineer position be unfrozen. The total expenditure budget increase needed in fiscal year 2021 for these actions is $101,000, with a total annualized cost increase in future years of $304,000 because 2 of these positions were previously frozen and not in the budget. It is important to note, however, that the planner position is anticipated to be 75% billable, while the engineer position is anticipated to be 95% billable. And therefore, that significantly reduces the impact on the general fund budget need. It's also important to note that the increased planning and engineering revenue over the last few years, as you can see in the chart in your agenda report on page 16, has been increasing. In fact, in fiscal year 1920, you can see that the combined anticipated revenue for the engineering and planning divisions is roughly double the 17-18 revenues, which helps support the need for additional staff in these areas.
That's page 62 electronically, just
I apologize. Thank
for
you.
the record.
Thank you. To an item regarding the Wildwood Mountain Bike Trail Phase 2. Due to the increase in mountain bike users on the city's multi-use trails, a single-track trail project dedicated to mountain bike was prioritized by City Council as part of the fiscal year 18-19 goals and objectives process. This Wildwood Mountain Bike Course single-track project was budgeted with an amount of $55,000 and approved in that budget. Staff is recommending, approved in the 1920 budget. Staff is recommending council approve an additional amount of $30,000 from the general fund to move forward with Phase 2 for an additional 1 mile of trail. And Fermin has a couple of comments on that as well.
Yes, thank you. The exhibit on the screen shows the site layout for this project. The project is located just east of Wildwood City Park. This is the city park here. Wildwood Canyon Road is to the north. What you see here is the layout for a future flood control facility, the Upper Wildwood Creek Basin 4. And the mountain bike course is proposed to be located here on city-owned property. Phase 1 is identified in red, Phase 2 is in orange. The contract for Phase 1 was awarded by City Council last year. Construction is underway. We just had the pre-construction meeting for this project last week. For Phase 2 in orange, it proposes to add approximately 1 mile to the course. Staff estimates that the $30,000 cost to complete Phase 2 can be done with volunteer efforts. Since the contract for Phase 1 was awarded, there has been an increase in volunteer interest to complete Phase 2, and that also includes a private individual who donated funds to expedite the completion of Phase 2. With council's approval, Phase 2 can be completed sooner and perhaps even as part of the current contract.
Thank you, Fermin. For one final recommended item, in fiscal year 18-19, council approved a total of $300,000 of general fund contributions to the pavement management program. In fiscal year 19-20, this amount was decreased to $200,000 due to economic conditions. Staff is recommending that the general fund annual contribution for this current fiscal year be increased by an amount of $100,000 for a total allocation in the amount of $300,000 to bring this funding level back to how it was 2 years ago. In the fiscal impact section, you can see charts of all the recommended changes to the fiscal year 19-20 budget on page 18 of my agenda. I believe it's page 64 electronically, including the listed funding source for each item. As you can see, staff is recommending an increase in overall expense budget more than the overall increase in revenue budget. As identified in the charts, a number of the items are anticipated to be spent from the assigned fund balance as indicated in the charts. And as a reminder, this assigned fund balance is made up of prior year service level options that may not have been completed. And therefore the city manager tracks that budget and recommends them to use for purposes in the future. This available assigned fund balance as of June 30th, 2019 was $4.59 million. Staff tracked $1.27 million of spending during fiscal year 19-20, which after that fiscal year would leave $3.32 million available. And then through the current fiscal year 2021, about $1.05 million of this balance was budgeted to be spent with the first quarter budget review item, leaving approximately $2.27 million available at this time. The total estimated impact of additional expenses the city manager recommends coming from assigned fund balance is approximately $643,000 in this current item, net of any percentage of staffing costs anticipated to be billable to projects or grant funding sources. Each of the recommendations related to staffing enhancements do have fiscal impact on future fiscal years. The annualized amount referenced for each enhancement in the body of the report will be a part of the annual adopted budget in future years. The cost for planners and engineers is anticipated to be mostly billable to grants and developer deposits, but the full cost of the deputy sheriff and network support specialist, which together is calculated to be approximately $312,000, is anticipated to be included in general fund operating budget in the future. We have provided a chart in the report that shows the historical general fund revenue trend data. This trend of historic year-over-year increase in revenues in the general fund, combined with current expectations for economic growth in the city, present a positive outlook for general fund revenues to support these increased costs necessary to provide appropriate levels of service to the community. You also see on the last page of your report the amounts being recommended for the DIF repayments for fiscal year 19-20. With that, the staff does recommend the council make take the actions in the recommendation section as listed. I would like to note the Finance Committee did review this item last week on Wednesday the 3rd. That completes this report, but staff is available for any questions you may have.
All right. Before I proceed, that was a great presentation, very thorough. You did an excellent job. Now, catch your breath. I do have a public speaker before we get into questions and comments. Christine, can you come on up? Give us your name and your address. We're going to try out our new policy.
Oh, my goodness. Christine Moeller, Fawn Ridge Place in Yucaipa, California. You know, before we get started on this topic, I want to say that as many times as I've spoken in front of the city council or just sat in the diocese, I thought the city council has been very generous with the time. And as rude as people have been, you've been very classy and have handled yourself very professionally. So you can't please all the people all the time, but I commend you for the way you do it. So regarding the budget and the projects, you know, Susie Southern, who sits on the EDAC committee, who's a very respected citizen, and I were speaking, and she couldn't be here tonight, so she asked me to read something. And it said, please request the first phase of developing the campsites for dry camping to begin. Cost for phase 1 should be minimal compared to full hookup sites. Great place for local camping and hiking for our residents and guests to the city. I also want to second that, but I also want to say, oh my gosh, with all the responsibilities you have for the budget and, you know, making sure that you're responsible and vigilant with the city's financing, these two projects with the Five Winds Ranch and the mountain bike course are projects that we've worked on for years and years. So with all the constraints and everything that you have to deal with COVID and everything, it's wonderful to further some projects that have been on the board and are just going to be so beneficial to our city and our Yucaipans. Having said that, Fermin Preciado, this would have never happened if it wasn't for you. And, you know, the Trails and Open Space Committee, we just absolutely adore working with him and can't thank him enough for all his participation. And with having said that, his boss, Ray Casey, I can't speak highly enough about city staff, and of course, everybody knows I love him as well. So when you're approving these increases and raises to city staff, they obviously are worthy of it. So I appreciate everything that you do for the city of Yucaipa.
Thank you, Christine. All right, so are there any questions or comments for staff?
I want to just clarify, I think you said it well, but I want to make sure that it's reiterated that although there is a drawdown to the community services budget, it looks like that is just to appropriately define what we are already anticipating on using and eliminating surplus, putting it back to the appropriate accounts so that we're not sitting with that in a surplus account. There is not an impact to our community as related to services rendered, but because of COVID, there's been an obvious drawdown. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, that's accurate. This item does not enact any change to decrease service to the community. It just simply to reflect what we've already been anticipating.
Certainly. That, and along with the MOU required raise to city staff, it's not that we're eliminating community services and community budgets to allocate a raise. This is pre-designated from last year, and we are in line with the COVID restrictions. So I think it's important that we make sure that that's clear to whomever is listening. Additionally, I do want to clarify, and I think this is the appropriate time to do so as it relates to development impact fees and with city staff moving forward, making sure that we are in line with regional standards as it relates to, are we in line with both residential and commercial diff? And if we are not, making sure we get into that appropriate range. At least that's my recommendation, and I think I can co-sign that. I appreciate the Five Winds Ranch stuff. I want to make sure that I also relay the speaker's sentiments. I think moving forward as quickly as we can on adding activities for our community to use, especially as COVID is taking away so many of these opportunities. Something as simple as grading pads for outdoor camping is important, and if we can move forward on that as soon as possible. Lastly, and I'll wrap it up, I'm just thrilled that we're looking at possibly adding a sheriff's deputy. I think our city, based on the last month, is hungry for more law enforcement presence. I would request that Captain Williams, along with his lieutenant, please relay to Employee Resources the need that Yucaipa has for a field-trained deputy. 6-month training program right now is not exactly what we're in need of. We need boots on the ground right now. With that, great presentation.
Bob, do you have anything?
Yeah, I do. actually.
Okay.
So, have we considered bidding out Charles Abbott and Associates? They're getting 65%, but when we talk about what we're getting with our planning department, we're getting 75 and 95%. So is there any correlation between those two numbers? I mean, have we ever bid that out to see if somebody would do it for 50%? Because it hasn't happened since I've been here.
No, you're absolutely right, Mayor Pro Tem. We have looked into it and looked at what other entities, other private purveyors' contracts are, and we're happy to do that again. When we looked into it before, those percentages were actually low for Charles Abbott compared to some of the other options that are out there, but we should look at it again, absolutely. In terms of comparing the 65-35 split with the estimated percentage of a planner or an engineer working on projects that are billable, they're kind of apples and oranges. Engineers, for example, do timesheets every week, and much of their time is allocated to drainage projects, transportation projects that are either grant-funded, partnership-funded, or sometimes related to development activity, so they're funded through the developer. And the same thing with planners. More grant-funded this year than we've seen before relative to the SCAG funding and other funding that we've received in planning for AVA, for example. So there are more opportunities for grant funding in the planning department than we've seen before, but even without that, the frontline planners they should be in that 75% range. What that means is 25% of the time they're answering questions at the front counter from someone that comes in and just wants to talk about a project, a potential project, or their property issues. Not necessarily billable, at least not something that we have billed for, but the other 25 or 75% of their time is billable towards whether it's a CEQA process, a project itself, where there is billable time. So our estimate for planning is around 75%. Engineering is actually around 95%.
So do some cities have this service that Charles Abbott's doing in-house?
There are some larger cities that do it in-house. More often than not, however, they do use contractor, consultant. There are several other consultants out there. So again, I think it's definitely worth looking into what some of those other options are, what those percentage splits are.
So what's the battalion chief driving now?
Well, this is our
I know what it is, but I'm just
yeah,
asking.
our commitment.
We've still got Station 2 problems. We've still got a budget problem with the fire, and we've had discussions about shutting that station down, which is ridiculous, but what is the battalion chief driving now?
This is a kind of a longer-term commitment as we evolve towards updating the contract with CAL FIRE. They've put it off for a year or two, but we haven't been charged for the battalion chief vehicle. That's the next step in their evolutionary process of the contract. And with respect to the station, it wasn't necessarily shutting down the station, just going to a medic squad, since something like 80% of our calls are medical and not fire-related calls. So I think that was the intent there. And there will be future discussions, if you will, about the levels of service and the costs associated with those levels of service, the wildlands costs. This recent fire, El Dorado fire, could have been much more expensive, and so some of the, for the city of Yucaipa, some of those costs will be discussed, and the evolving contract will be discussed first with the Public Safety Committee and then with the full council.
So the 15% less on the sales tax, are we still good with that?
That's what we're tracking. That's about what we're tracking.
And then the property tax is gonna be about the same as last year, is that what you said?
Yes, it's difficult to make a fully annualized projection based on how the timing of property taxes coming in is so, here and there, and we actually usually receive the majority of it in the second half of the fiscal year. But just based on the trends from prior years, it does look to be consistent with what we've seen in the prior years, and so we're sticking with the budgeted numbers for this
at
And
this
the
time.
the VLF fees, is that, that extra money that's being collected, is that going to SB1? Do we get any of that at all, or is that
Yes,
just?
we do get additional SB1 money. And just to clarify the property tax question, yes, we're always conservative, and being conservative this year, I think, is particularly helpful in estimating no net increase in property taxes, given the circumstances that we're in. And one of the challenges that we have as a community is, I guess it's a nice problem to have, that folks would like to move here. There just isn't a lot of houses for sale. Last I heard, we were at 60 homes, and with Prop 13, obviously, sales and properties changing hands has an important component of those overall property taxes. So.
And how's the Director of Administrative Services, how's that coming as far as recruiting someone? Is that?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to announce that Ryan is our new interim finance director, and he's, from what I can see, doing a great job for us. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share that with the community today.
You good?
I think that's all I had.
Good, all right. Moving over to this side, David, do you have anything?
Just a couple of clarifying questions. You're saying about $101,000 for an IT specialist. Confirming that includes salary, benefits, and vehicle, or is there anything else associated with that?
These annualized costs include all payroll-related costs at the budgeted amount. We budget at the top step of the range.
Okay, very good. And the bicycle track, you said we need $30,000, and you suggested that there was a benefactor that provided some, that donated some money. What's it going to cost? What's the final cost to build that 1 mile of track? And are volunteers going to build this, or is this going to be a project developed by the city or a contractor with volunteers?
It's proposed to be completed with a contractor, with the help of volunteers. The contractor will do the trail building, and where even the contractor expressed interest in using the volunteers to help trim the bushes and to make room when you're on the bike. So it's a combination of contractor and volunteer effort.
And what's the estimated cost to build the whole track?
To complete phase 2, it's, well, with the volunteer effort, it's about $40,000, but we could do it with $30,000 in funding and then volunteer effort on top of that.
Okay, and then finally, just to tag on to Mayor Pro Tem's comments with respect to the fire, we're pulling about $551,000 out of the fire fund. What do we have left in the fire fund?
If you give me one moment, I could. 10. I believe it's approximately 10 million in the fire fund balance. Apologies. I do believe we have approximately 10 million in the fire fund balance as of now. But, you know, at the rate of 500,000 a year, approximately being drawn down specifically for the paramedic budget deficit right now.
Okay, and just for the record, the $100,000 for the pickup truck, that's about the right price for all the stuff that you guys articulated. Be thankful it's not also for a peace officer. That goes up another $25,000 or $30,000 easy. All right, thank you.
All right, John, do you have anything?
Let's try that again. One thing I have is that when it comes to the sheriff additional deputy, I'm going to have to recuse myself from that on this at this time, since I am with the sheriff's department until we get further clarification on that.
Okay, so what item is there? I know we have to still vote on items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. So which item would we?
It would be recommendation 1, as it includes the budget to increase for the deputy.
Okay, so how about we make a motion for 2, 3, 4, and 6, and then you can recuse yourself on 1.
That'll work.
Is that okay? So do we have a motion to accept
Well,
items?
just, I'd like to,
Go ahead, Bob.
just one thing, I understand how expensive trucks are, or vehicles are, but we're in a pandemic, and this is not business as usual. And I am concerned about our budget. I mean, I hope everybody understands that we are in fact in a budget situation right now. We're not fat and flush like we've been bragging about for the last 25 years or 20 years or whatever. That this is a different time for Yucaipa. And making sure that we're responsible right now with what we're deciding. I'm very uncomfortable with this. Just having 2 days to try to figure it out makes me a little bit nervous, but I get it. I get it, but dump the truck and keep the station open, that's what I would prefer doing, but maybe that's not even an issue. But the fact of
It
the
shouldn't
matter
be,
is,
in closing a station or modifying the staffing levels is not on the table, correct?
no, I understand that, but we're still in a budget crisis right now. We're not fat. You know, we've got an issue right now with our city, and it's not business as usual, but it seems like everyone's sort of acting like it's business as usual, and it's not. And this is the first time that I've been on council where I was worried about it, because before it seemed like we had it under control, then all of a sudden, we've got a problem. And I'm just concerned about where we're headed right now with spending this money. If we've got it, great, let's spend it. But if we don't have it, or if we're gonna put ourselves in a spot 2-3 years down the road here, I'm gonna be gone in 4 years. I'm sure there are those that are happy about that, but I just don't want it to happen on while I'm on the council. I don't want to drive the bus into the ground, that's what I'm saying. And I know it's not that bad, I'm just concerned about this, that's all.
So may I respond to that, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Couple of responses. First, I still believe that, and Mr. Blackersby referenced that we're not recommending changes in terms of revenues or expenses for this fiscal year, other than the ones that he referenced in community services and building and safety, and that we're still working on the final audit information relative to last fiscal year. But I think we've seen enough to give me confidence in saying that we are one of the few cities in the state that can say that we made it through last fiscal year without dipping into reserves. If you recall, council had allowed staff to dip into the committed fund balance, dropping it from 30% threshold to 20% threshold if needed. But our indications are in the audit effort that they weren't needed, that we were able to absorb the impact to our budget with those frozen positions. Today, it was mostly about unfreezing those positions, as council has shared in recent months. Freezing those positions in planning and engineering and other areas certainly had an impact on services with the increase in activity in planning and building and safety. So most of what we are talking about today is unfreezing some of those positions. We've also talked about needing additional public safety, and it is definitely time to move in that direction with the recent events in terms of additional deputy sheriff and another $150,000 in cameras and ALPRs. So we think that that is critical moving forward. With respect to the fire truck, I understand the concern. That is not something that has been on the table before now. Has been dragged out, if you will, until now. But the rest of the, or all of the, for the most part, service level options that are being requested today, or the unfreezing positions today, come from those service level options that we closed out last first quarter, I guess it was, around first quarter. I think it was with the first quarter. We came to you with a list of service level options that had either already been completed over a number of years, or that had been deprioritized by council over time, just hadn't been cleaned up. And so that $4.5 million plus or minus assigned fund balance has been the source of most of what we are talking about today. And the estimated cost is about $670,000 out of that over $2.2 million in remaining balance. So there's still a contingency, if you will, in that assigned fund balance. There's still, and Ryan has done a good job and his team at looking forward into next fiscal year for some of these operating budget costs and what they're going to mean for our budget going forward. And we still have that internal contingency, if you will, in the assigned fund balance and the 20-some million in undesignated fund balance, savings accounts. And so we feel pretty comfortable making these recommendations. And again, for the community and the planning efforts for the community, engineering efforts for the community, the safety issues, and as Mr. Blackersby mentioned, all of a sudden, we have all of this IT support needed, whether it's cameras, ALPRs, internet permits, plan checks, all that sort of thing. Just takes that effort that necessitates the additional IT position. So we are comfortable. We're as comfortable as we've been. Certainly, we didn't see this kind of we didn't see the kind of decrease in revenues that we saw back in 2009, 2010. Some of you were around for that recession. But we have been impacted by the pandemic, but I am comfortable that we have a good plan going forward.
All right. With that, does anyone have anything else? So did we have a motion on item, we don't have a motion on items 2, is it 2, 3, 4? No, we've already done 5, correct? So 2, 3, 4, and 6
I'll motion to approve those items.
for those items?
Yes,
So we
sir.
have a motion, we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so John, we're going to take a vote on item 1. So would you like to recuse? It was item 1, correct?
Yeah, he could sit here for the motion.
Oh,
one, I think.
well, he's gone. It's the same, right? All right, so is there a motion to adopt item number 1?
I'll move.
A second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. So that takes us into a public hearing, which is item number 8. So I will open up the public hearing and turn it over to, is it Fermin or Ben?
Ben Matlock will be presenting this item.
Okay.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Before you is case number 19020, submitted by the R.C. Hobbs Company, which consists of a minor general plan amendment to rezone property with a split land use designation of our city's RM 72C or multiple residential into RL 2.5, 2.5 acre minimum lot size, to have a single designation within the developable portion of RM 72C, and then a conditional use permit and tentative tract map to permit a 44-unit condominium project on the subject site. Property itself is on approximately 6.88 gross acres, just south of the city's fire station at 5th Street and Wildwood Canyon Road, and so access is along 5th Street. And then as noted, it does currently have kind of a split land use designation on it. And so as part of it, the applicant has submitted a general plan or minor general plan amendment to essentially consolidate the existing developable portion of the site to have one single land use district, and then essentially allow a project to be designed consistent with a uniform standard. Density itself is comparable to surrounding development, including apartments to the south of the site and the mobile home park that's located west of the subject property. And then as noted, they included a conditional use permit for 44 detached units arranged in the fashion shown on the site plan and on the screen. And then also include a tentative tract map number 20263 that essentially establishes the airspace for each unit. So it's a one lot project, and then each owner owns common interest within the condominium project. And then as part of this layout, it essentially allows the project to emulate a traditional single-family kind of lots, but in a slightly different ownership pattern. But the project itself is designed to look, for all intents and purposes, as a single-family project, and then includes two-story home floor plans, However, as a RM designated project, it does have to conform to the city's multiple family design requirements in the municipal code, as well as the citywide design guidelines. And so the project itself does provide the required amenities as listed in the development code, as well as providing site amenities. So there's private yards for each individual unit, and then common open space for the residents on site, and then the necessary infrastructure to support the residents in that project. And then as part of it, as noted in the agenda report and on the screen, is a comparison of the city's development code requirements and whether or not the project would comply. So provided the general plan amendment is approved, the project would meet the requirements of the RM 72C land use district. And then as part of it, so this project is comparable to other projects that have been built in the past in the city of Yucaipa. So this one is located just south of Yucaipa Boulevard. This was a TB project built a few years ago. And so this is kind of the similar project type that is proposed with this specific entitlement. And as part of the project, they have submitted a architectural review package that's included in an agenda packet. I'm not going to go over necessarily every individual plan, but just want to provide a slide showing for the members of the public the different architectural elevations. As part of the project, they do have 4 overall floor plans, and then essentially 3 different architectural styles to provide variety through the design of the project. And so each of the floor plans generally have 2 different styles, and then there's a floor plan 4 that has a slightly different architecture style for additional variety. And then as part of the project, they have submitted the conceptual landscaping plan that shows generally how they will provide the landscaping around the project site. The front yards will be all common maintained as part of the HOA for the project. And then as a kind of traditional single-family style project, the individual rear yards will be subject to the development of the future homeowner, so they'll get to design their rear yards similar to a traditional subdivision project. And then as part of it, they have submitted the wall and fencing plans, which I'll discuss in the next slide, or in a subsequent slide. As part of the environmental review, the project is subject to the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, and so a MND was prepared pursuant to the CEQA guidelines, which determine all impacts are less than significant. Kind of the notable measure is that the traffic study did identify some required improvements to the intersection of 5th Street and Wildwood Canyon Road that the developer paid their in lieu fee of kind of their burden of the project. However, as part of the DRC meeting that was held on November 21st, 2019, the applicant did agree to complete those striping improvements in their entirety rather than paying a portion of what that cost would be. And so that has been included within the conditions of approval for the specific project. As part of the project review, several different comments were received with concerns about the project, and then there was one comment received on the initial study, or the MND, after the public comment period had ended, and then responses are provided in the environmental review section of the staff report that addresses each specific comment that was raised in that public comment letter. Project was initially reviewed by the Planning Commission on December 18th, 2019, and was recommended for approval with the addition of one condition of approval, focus on the pedestrian safety at the entrance of the project. So those are walking to the proposed dog park or the other public amenities, to include some sort of design feature that helps make sure that it's a safe spot for the pedestrians walking within the project. After the Planning Commission recommendation on the project, an appeal request was submitted by Better Neighborhoods Incorporated, noting concerns, saying that the Planning Commission did not, that their comments were not addressed by the Planning Commission. However, the letter that was received on the MND was included as part of the commission reference. The agenda report included the responses to those comments, and then also the chair, the Planning Commission chair at the time, had also asked the applicant if they had any additional response to staff's responses on the specific comments. So as part of that comment letter that had initially been received, the Planning Commission did weigh the merits of those comments at that time. And then the project itself was reviewed at the January 15th, 2020 City Council meeting. As part of the project, City Council discussed the overall project and had considered requiring a block wall along the northern and western property lines, so adjacent to the city's fire station. and the mobile home park to the west. However, the applicant has requested that the vinyl fence as shown on the fencing and wall plan of the project remain, and so they are happy to answer any questions related to that. However, at that meeting, one public comment letter was received right before the public hearing with a number of different comments, and so as part of the initial review by City Council, project was continued in order to provide staff the opportunity to respond to all those comments. And then those comments have been included within the agenda report, and then the letter that was submitted by that individual is also included. Since the project was reviewed, one additional floor plan, as I mentioned, floor plan 4 was also included into the project design. Below, or on the screen is some site photos showing the existing configuration of the vacant parcel. And with that, staff does recommend approval of the project. One condition I did want to note that will need to be modified is condition number 10, which is in regards to the CEQA filing fee. The fee that's referenced on there is from the 2020 fees, and it did go up approximately about $80 or so. And so that total fee has been relayed to the applicant. And so when they submit their required fee for the Fish and Wildlife and the clerk of the board fee, that updated number would be reflected through that check. And with that, staff is happy to answer any questions.
All right, so are there any questions for staff? Is the applicant here? Craig?
I have a question. What's the elevation difference between the fire station and the development?
I don't recall the exact number, but there is a pretty notable drop, and then there is a retaining wall that I believe is proposed.
About 45 feet.
From the fire station down to the
Down
pad
to
site?
the bottom of the hill there, yeah.
So there's a hill basically going up to the fence that, at the property line between the fire station and the project?
Correct. So, okay, first off, Craig Heaps, 34259 Via Buena Drive in Yucaipa. So part of our reason for not wanting the fence, besides the block wall up top, besides there being the issue of all the building going on there, is we do have a fence, and then we do have retaining wall as well up on the hill. And then up top, there already is for about maybe alongside the fire station itself, there is a block wall there already that they have up top. I did meet with the battalion chief to go over that and review it and get his thoughts on it. And without speaking for him, I think we were on the same page that there's enough hillside and retaining wall and wall already that you don't need anything up top as well. Plus all the, there's lots of shrubbery and trees and everything else kind of blocking it all too. So I don't think we felt in having a conversation there would be any issue with people trying to go up and down on the back there or anything of that nature. So I did do the homework there and speak with the battalion chief about it.
So are you suggesting that there's no fence between the fire station and the project? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no, there's a fence. It's just that there's already on the lower portion, there is a retaining wall and a wall. We were talking last time about maybe putting some wall up top as well. But the suggestion is we don't need that because we do have, will be backyard fences here. And there will be some retaining up in here too, but up at the top, we won't be putting any
And that's
walls.
all open space? It's not part of the property?
On the other side of the wall, it's open space, yes.
Okay, and that will be maintained by the HOA or somebody?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
And then just to complete where I'm at, because I know we went over a lot of it last time. Of course, congratulations to the two of you on your new positions. Congratulations. On this side here, there was some talk about a block wall. There's already a block wall there. And the block wall, if you look, these mobile homes are very close to the PL here. In fact, some of them are 5 feet, 6 feet, 7 feet. So we are backyard to backyard here, and because we've already got a block wall here, on our side, we want to retain it with a vinyl fence. We will do block along the frontage, so we have that nice look. Backyard to backyard, we would have the vinyl, which would be offset on top of the block wall there. And of course, in the front section there, you have the dog park here, and you have the open space down here, so you've got the tubular fencing down there, so you have different styles. But we would like to keep it the way we structured it because of the block wall that's already here and because we do have the separation up here. We're very conscious of that, and that's why I had the meeting, to make sure we were all on the same page there.
And that fencing along the south side, that's all for view shed? You
Yes,
said, okay, and there's clearance between that and the natural vegetation?
yes.
What's that?
And there's also open space here, partially because Yucaipa Valley Water District has access there as well.
Okay. Wasn't there an emergency access out of that project along the,
Down here.
it's still there?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed that. I kept looking for
No,
that.
because it wasn't drawn in at the time. It was just, we agreed to that at the time of the hearing.
Okay.
Basically of having that.
So
that
the final
access there.
map will reflect that?
Yeah.
Okay.
The other item that I have that I'd like to discuss is item number, I think it's 88, Ben, I think. I'm sorry, I should have had it available, but anyway, it's in relation to the, your mask on, you can't lift your finger to move your pages. I think it's item, anyways, it's in relation to, back in 2006, when we did our first of these projects of these gated communities, which is the one over between 6th and 7th next to the 7th Street Park. We started there kind of with a program. I was with Fidelity Homes at the time, and we started with a program of having the homeowners association take care of the front yards, to keep them up and so forth. R.C. Hobbs, who's the builder here, has several projects in other communities, Rialto and other places, where they require the property owners to take care of the front yards. And the purpose of that is to keep the HOA fees down, to keep the tax rates down and the HOA fees down. But what they do put in there, instead of saying that the HOA will take care of the front yards, is the property owner takes care of the front yards, but the HOA has the ability, if they don't cut it and trim and do the things they're supposed to do, where the HOA then can come in and do the work and then bill them for it. So everybody has the opportunity to do their front yard, not have that additional landscaping fee on their HOA bill. So I'd like to request that on this particular project that we go to that type of a situation. It would be written into the CC&Rs that the landowners would take care of their immediate front yards and side yards, and that if they didn't take care of it, the HOA would take care of it and bill them for it. So
How would the HOA provide watering if the homeowner decides not to water?
well, the water will be provided anyway because the HOA these projects have the, I'm not sure if it's available here or not. Actually, the landowner would have to water their own yard, because I don't think in this one, is the water available there, the recycled water, do you know, the purple? On this part of Fifth Street?
I believe there's non-potable water on Fifth Street, yes.
If so, then there'll be one meter there anyway that'll be paid for by the HOA to water all the front yards and backyards.
Okay.
Well, most HOAs can assess fees regardless, right?
Right.
For non-maintenance.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
But no, that's all. That's my only other thing. And by the way, the reason we added a fourth unit is because on one of Hobbs's other projects, they have a 5-bedroom unit that's going really well because people are working out of their home now. And it's their hottest selling model right now. And so we've put that bigger unit in to just allow for that 5th bedroom so that they have home offices and stuff. So, and I think these will be a lot different. I don't know if you saw, we've broken ground on 33 lots on 5th Street just off Via Buena Drive. So those are just finished grading, or they're going to be finished grading in the next day or so. So those have the ones on 5th Street. The other project just up the street have some 1-bedrooms and I mean 1 stories and 2 stories, where these are all 2s. So there's going to be some nice variety along 5th Street there. So we're getting going.
All right, thanks, Craig.
All right, thank you.
Is there anything else that staff wants to add? Do you guys have any questions for staff?
I don't.
Are you guys good? You good, Ben?
Yeah, I'll have to read the ordinance if city council makes a motion to
Should I
approve the project.
close the public hearing and open it up for? I'm trying to do this in order. I know I don't do a good job sometimes, but I'm trying. So I'll close the public hearing and open it up for council discussion. You guys have anything you'd like to add?
I don't.
Justin, you're kind of quiet over there. No, Bob?
I think it's a fantastic project, and I'd like to see us approve it.
Okay,
That's about almost all the ones that SCAG added to us right there.
you got it.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with this project. Taking in consideration the letters of opposition, I think overall this project is a good one.
Okay. John, you good?
You good?
All right, so you want to read something, Ben?
Sure, I'll read ordinance number 383, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Yucaipa, California, amending ordinance number 343, amending the official land use plan and zoning ordinance of the City of Yucaipa.
All right, so do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we approve this project.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second.
Just
Dave, you have
clarify for the record that that's all items 1 through 7 is listed in the staff, or, excuse me, 8
It's-
as listed in the staff report.
Yes, 1 through 7,
1 through 8.
1 through 8.
And also to not require the block wall on the northern and western property line, correct?
Did that include, was that included in your motion?
Say that again, I'm sorry?
To not require the block wall on the northern and western property line.
Okay.
Are you okay with that second, John?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Carries 5-0. All right, so that takes us to announcements. Are there any announcements?
I'd just like to say that I attended an event at the BMX track, and I got to tell you, that is such an amazing place with those kids, especially during this ridiculous pandemic that we're in. Some folks had a mask on, some folks were out there huffing and puffing, riding their bikes, but those kids were happy, they were exercising, and I was so excited to see that. And I think that we ought to do everything we can as a city to advertise that, because that is an amazing draw for the city of Yucaipa.
I agree. I go by there on Sundays, and it's really... Justin, do you have anything?
No, Mr. Mayor.
David? John?
No, sir.
All right, so that takes us to closed session. Dave, do you have something?
Yes,
for
thank
us?
you, Mr. Mayor. We've got items on this evening's agenda for closed session. It's potential litigation, where the council will meet in closed session to discuss potential litigation and determine whether whether there's significant exposure to litigation involving the city. And we've got a total of 2 items with respect to one category of potential litigation under the Brown Act, and one case for another category. We don't expect reportable action this evening.
All right, so with that, I will adjourn this city council meeting.